So our next panel discussion, the topic is impact of key global trends on the local textile industry. And I'll introduce the moderator first and then the panelists. The moderator for this panel discussion is Mr. Azfar Hasan, who is the CEO Matrix Sourcing Group, Pakistan. So our next participant is Ms. Anne Marchal, who is the delegation of the European Union to Pakistan. Mr. Navaid Fazil, CEO Interloop Limited, Pakistan. Mr. Holger Fischer, Managing Director, Centra Limited. Mr. Karl Borgschulze, Managing Director, Consulting Services International Limited, Hong Kong. And we're very honored to have Dr. Salman Shah, who is the Advisor to Chief Minister on Economic Affairs and Planning, on the panel as well. Thank you.
So it's an honor for me to moderate this panel with our guests, Karl, Holger, Anne, Salman, and Navaid. It's a very knowledgeable group, and I hope we can benefit from their knowledge and experience and ask them some very critical questions about our industry and where the world is going. So you've heard some speeches already. Holger's been here talking about sustainability, and Navaid's been talking about his operation. And quite honestly, these are impressive people who've achieved a lot. I have special admiration for Holger for what he's done for Pakistan and stuck it out through all these years. And for Navaid, he is probably, if I say there's one person in Pakistan who's an example to follow, it would have to be him. He's a very humble person, doesn't say much about himself. But for somebody to start with 10 machines and go to 5,000 and do it the way, with the kind of social impact that he's been able to achieve, I'm really proud of having him as a somebody who's a colleague in the industry, and there's so much that we can learn from him. And of course, is here as the EU delegate, and we're very thankful for the EU to provide its support with the GSP program, because I think, while our exports have been pretty much, flatlined over the years, the EU program has really helped our industry access that market in a way that has had a tremendous impact on the industry. Even now, the European customers are much more inclined to coming to Pakistan. For example, Adidas has increased its production in Pakistan manyfold. Similarly, Inditex is an important customer in Pakistan and has created a huge impact with the amount of purchasing it's doing in Pakistan. And Salman has been associated through many governments in the past and has been in key positions advising the government and also working in the government on policy matters, especially related to our industry. So I'd like to go around and discuss the trends that are prevailing and how they are impacting Pakistan, and especially like in view of the situation with China. So Karl, if I can start with you, because that's one end. There's a lot of talk about what's happening between the US and China, and we see a lot of shift coming. And we know the beneficiaries are Bangladesh and Vietnam at the moment. Where does Pakistan stand in this shift?
Well, I would say Pakistan has a lot of chances at the moment. The trade conflict, of course, will influence the behavior of international buyers. And don't forget on the other side that China is already pushing out of textile and garments because on the one side of the higher wages, but as well as a strategic goal. They want to go somewhere else. And what you can see already, a lot of Chinese investment in Bangladesh, for example. Of course, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, traditional Chinese supply markets. Pakistan, I think, has not fully grabbed the chances which are there, but the potential is there. But clearly we have to work on the weak points. And thank you very much, by the way, for your presentation. which really got into the core of some problems. And I'm happy today to be able to announce that yesterday we started a big project funded by the German government called Sustainable Pakistan, which is about promoting Pakistan, the garment and fashion industry worldwide, to show people outside that Pakistan is much more than bad reputation. You have a lot of good things here in these countries. You have a very good labor force. You have a lot of people who can really do the job. Yes, we have the cotton here. A lot of improvement is necessary, but it is much more possible in global trade than we have at the moment. And it's important and very well needed for this country to have these kind of improvements and to come to a really stable and good and sustainable future.
Okay. So what I hear is that Pakistan needs to create some stories and buzz around itself to enter the market. Salman, what are you hearing from the circles, and what's your opinion on, are we missing the boat here? Like, why are exports not increasing to the US while others are getting them?
Thank you, Azfar. Thanks for inviting me to this panel, and there are lots of very knowledgeable people over here. But I can give you my assessment of where we stand at the moment, and I think we are at rock bottom, as you very well told us in your earlier session. But I think that we are probably one country which has the biggest potential to benefit from what's happening in the world today. So let me just say a few things about what, from a government's perspective, for us, we are the 5th largest country in the world, almost 220 million people, and 60% of the people are under the age of 25. And that means we have a very huge youth bulge. The second characteristic is that lots of our people are moving from the rural areas to the urban areas, and this youth has to find jobs in the urban area. And the number of jobs which we need every year for the next 30 years is around 3 million jobs a year, new jobs. That means that over the next 30 years, we are going to gain at least 100 million in working age population. And if our female population starts to participate in the workforce, this number will go up even more. And we are seeing that particularly in the textile sector and the garment sector, the female participation rates have started to move in the right direction, but it is still a long way to go. So that's the number one trend for me as a policy maker, that not only we are going to be needing all these jobs, textile is the only game in town to start with. And of course, then you graduate to other chains. The second point is that today, Pakistani labor is perhaps the cheapest labor in the world, even though it may not be the most productive labor in the world. We are about 1/7 of the wage rate compared to China, and maybe even more than that. So there is a lot of interest from Chinese industry which is relocating to other countries. So far, as you mentioned, they went to Vietnam and East Asia, but they are very seriously looking at Pakistan. And I was told just this morning that just a few miles from where we are sitting along the Kasur Road, there is a Chinese investment for garments over a 600-acre site, which is totally owned by the Chinese company, and they are putting it in all the necessary infrastructure and for garments and also the inputs into garments. And that is something which is probably going to happen more and more. From our perspective, we would like more and more joint ventures between Chinese manufacturers and Pakistani manufacturers, because the Pakistani industry also has a lot of experience. They have had access to global markets. They understand how global markets work. And I think with partnership, with joint ventures, we may be able to really make a breakthrough. Now with the FTA with China, we have almost 300 items which can go into China duty-free. And lots of them are related to the textile business. And so I see there's a lot of opportunity, particularly for accessing China, but also integrating with the Chinese textile industry and be able to not only, as you mentioned, Pakistan is very poor in the fabric side. We can have great collaboration with Chinese companies in fabric, because they have the scale and they have the know-how, and they are, so that's one part of it. The other part is that the trade war between China and the US has indicated very positively to Pakistan on trade issues. Donald Trump just said off the cuff that he wants to increase trade not by a few percentage, but 20 times. And he probably is interested in replacing some of the imports from other countries with Pakistani imports, and so that can only help. Because last time when we were looking for access into the US, we were told that Pakistani industry is a big threat to the US industry and you can't enter. But today the senator from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, is leading the case for Pakistan for trade, and almost 15 years ago, he was the person who shot down all the free trade arrangements which we had planned for the US. So that is again a very positive thing. I think the last few years has been very bad for the textile industry, and they are in a weak position internally, and they have to really raise themselves to a much higher level of capability, technology. Also, their workforce has to be much better, and I think that they need a lot of financing, and financing is an area where we are very weak, and that those areas have to be certainly improved. So all in all, I'm very bullish about the textile industry of Pakistan. I think we have great opportunities. The market pull is there. We have to now put our act together to make sure that we can supply what is in demand all over the world. Unfortunately, during the past year or so, the focus of the textile industry has been on its input costs and the energy costs and government provision of services, and they have not been able to really concentrate on the global opportunities which are available, and garments is definitely one of them. And Pakistan should be a major garment player, at least for the few 5 to 10 years looking forward. We may not become digitally very sophisticated, but we can make up with being the least cost producer and also produce the quality at a price which no other country will be able to match. And I think that is something which we'll have to sell, and that means we really have to market not only our image, but also the product and the reliability and all those factors which are so essential in the textile. business, and unless we generate a lot of business in textile, we are not going to graduate to other value chains. So Pakistan is going to be a factory of the world.
So there is
there's
light
no,
at the
no,
end
no,
of the tunnel for
yes,
sure.
Yes.
But, let me, who better to ask than Navaid here, because he's got customers from Europe, from US, from global clients. Do you see like a movement from the US customers that is different than the past? Do you see them recognizing that Pakistan may be a place to, is there any initial, we missed the first wave, but is there anything going on right now?
Thank you. So first of all, I think you know better than me that for the past 10 years, customers from the West, especially US, they were avoiding Pakistan because of law and order and other situation. And we lost a lot of business just because of them not coming to Pakistan, you know that. During the last 2 years, we have seen US retailers and customers and now brands talking about coming to Pakistan. So for two reasons. First of all, as you mentioned, the trade war between China and US, and secondly, because of the conditions improving in Pakistan, both on law and order and energy shortages. So there is a lot of interest in Pakistan, I must say, because retailers and brands in US, they are worried. Even the European retailers, not because of the trade war, but because even otherwise the prices in China are going up. So brands like Adidas, they want to shift more and more business to Pakistan. So there is no, I think, at least I'm very clear that customers want to source from Pakistan more and more. The question is on us, whether we are able to supply that or not. So what is happening, I think government has done a lot of work on providing incentives, as you said, to the big boys. So what's happening is all that money is going, the windfall is going into their pockets. So that is not being invested. Partly, so we need big investment into textile industry because we don't have sufficient capacity. If a big retailer comes to Pakistan, asks, he needs capacity. He will not come for a marginal. So I think the major issue now for our industry is to take lead, have courage and invest. I think there are genuine issues like the interest rate going up, although there is a subsidy for export industry and the devaluation, so people are worried to invest. But somehow if the industry can come out of this limbo and invest in increasing their capacities, I think selling won't be a problem as far as I'm concerned.
Super. So like we share, one of our customers is one of the largest sports brand in the world coming from the US. And we've noticed that for the last 10 years, like we've been saying, they had a cap on Pakistan, and it goes back to a risk index that they say they look at. And the risk index, Pakistan was in the highest risk countries, supposedly. So they liked the product coming from Pakistan, but they didn't like the risk. So they put a cap on it. Whatever you're doing, just leave it there. And with Navaid, they said, if you go to another country, we'll increase even what we place with you in Pakistan. But now, for the first time, they've removed that cap. And as a result, the production's bumping up to be twice what we were doing with this brand. And similarly, I think there's an opportunity that we may have missed the first wave, but there's an opportunity to catch it. But we need the stories. And in your position, there are two questions I need to get to you. One is with the GSP regime, where are we? Is it fragile for Pakistan? Where are we on that? And secondly, we spoke about this whole issue of travel advisory, not especially for the Americans, the Europeans still. Do you see that little dark area where the Europeans are reluctant to? Is that affecting our business, and is that opening up? How would you respond?
Thank you very much. I won't say too much about the GSP in this panel because that will be actually the core of my presentation tomorrow. Okay. I have a very difficult slot. It's 9 o'clock, so I hope that you will come. Just for those of you who might not be able to come, just let me say a few words. First of all, the GSP is a regulation from the European Union that grants unilateral preferential market access to developing countries. And there are, let's say, 3 levels: the GSP, the general GSP. Then there is a GSP plus, which is a situation into which Pakistan is. And then there is also the everything but arms. So, which is meant for the least developing countries, or the LDCs. So it's something that the only really, I would say, conditional access to is the GSP Plus, which basically grants a country which would otherwise have graduated into a level of EBA, if you want, country. So it's a practically zero duty for most of the products. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that tomorrow, including because I think that some other speakers today have already pointed at the plateau of the export to the EU. No, you were mentioning, and amongst the many interesting presentations that we heard today, it's about the story, the image of Pakistan and so on. Also the ease of doing business to a point, or the, how to attract foreigners to come here, being the buyers or investors and so on and so forth. I will touch that also in my presentation tomorrow. But one thing is about travel advice. And one part of my work at the office is to look at consular matters. And it is true that the government of Pakistan is putting a lot of effort these days into presenting Pakistan, a new Pakistan, but also a Pakistan open to the world, and looking at tourism as also a source of income. And obviously a city like Lahore with so much cultural heritage should be a destination city. I've noticed, for instance, that the Pakistani visa, tourist visas, the fees have decreased and they have been simplified also. But business visas, for instance, are still quite expensive. But many business people would also look at their government's travel advice. And to be honest, except a few member states of the European Union, the travel advice are pretty negative, if not for a few, like do not travel at all. And one reason why, in spite of a lot of efforts from my fellow Pakistani diplomats and ambassadors who try to encourage countries to revise their travel advice, is it's simple. People in the diplomatic and consular missions are afraid not to be able to offer consular services, because every movement of a diplomat is subject to a non-objection certificate. So there are paperwork, there are areas where you can't work, but even me coming and visiting you required a note verbal to announce that I'm coming and so on and so forth, and I have to make sure I have the paper in case there is a control. So the reason is that if a consular country cannot grant access to its citizen who could be in conflict of the law or have met a tragic accident, is that if you have to ask and wait for at best 5 days, or if not 3 weeks, or if not never, how would you like countries to change the travel advice and make it, okay, come and visit Pakistan? Obviously, in a country like Pakistan and the geographical situation here, there will always be in areas where there will be a recommendation to avoid. But obviously the main industrial hubs, the main cities shouldn't be a problem. But I think that the government should also look at how to ease this aspect, and that would also have a positive impact.
That's super interesting, because, you know, like when we go to talk with the government about, you know, what they can do to help the industry, we talk about, here's, you know, like how you can reduce the cost of energy, give us some rebate, you know, like reduce the tax. But I think, you know, like what she's saying is that if the embassy cannot help its citizens, how can it lower the travel advisory? It's something as simple as that. If the business community was to bring that on the table, you know, it's something so simple, but it can have a deep impact on the industry. So we miss out on these opportunities because we focus only on, you know, what we see in the immediate, you know, like our presence. Holger, you've been involved with the industry quite a bit. And it's interesting that you're working on sustainability. What's our story there to the outside world right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, where are we? Poor, good, excellent? And how, like you working on it now with Karl, how can we make this a sustained effort that these stories go out constantly? What's the opportunity here?
Yeah, the opportunity is really develop more and more sustainable factories. And if you speak about the world ranking, I have to admit I'm not sure about, let's say, all the Chinese suppliers, but if I see it, compare it, let's say, to the Asian markets, Pakistan is already, I would say, not in the rating down, I would say it's already in the improving steps. So on the scale 1 to 10, I would rate Pakistan around 4. With the possibility, clearly possibility, if a lot of prerequisites and requirements would be fulfilled, to easily, within the next 2 to 5 years, get up to 8, 10, if we speak about sustainability. And clearly, I think this is exactly the point where you could differentiate the Pakistani textile industry from other textile industry and other sourcing markets. Look, to my experience here from Pakistan, because I started working in Pakistan since 1991, I did nearly 10 years in Turkey, just for an example. And it was always, the difference was always, okay, when I came in Pakistan, I thought, oh my God, good fabrics, even quite nice setups, the companies I got to know, but no knowledge, let's say, or less knowledge about fashion, zero knowledge, you can say, and also no knowledge about, let's say, proper supply chain management, meaning especially if we were talking about capacity planning. I have a customer, I need so many goods. And this is a chance where Pakistan, if really, also we foreigners and people like you, if we do a proper job and assist the industry and even do the train-to-trainer program on a basis, nobody is perfect, yeah? So I think then Pakistan has a chance, and I think that the industry here, the people are looking forward to increase the export. And if I look at the figures of the last years, I'm fairly disappointed about the performance of Pakistan. Yeah, I was expecting that, especially after they were granted the GSP 1st January 2014, that the exports will boost. But if you look at the figures, they are nearly the same. For me, it's a negative thing. I would think you would say the same if your company, if you don't increase every year, it's not a good result. No? And I think that maybe the biggest problem is we always regarded here, Pakistan, we always regarded to be competitor of Bangladesh, India. We should not look at them. We should look at our own strengths here in Pakistan. And the own strengths are companies and people, yeah, who really look into the future. And clearly one future, and for me the most important thing is sustainable textile production. This is the future. If you do this, you will easily get customers all over the world, and you will raise the awareness globally. Hey, they even know about sustainability, and the people even produce sustainable textiles.
Mm-hmm. Karl, what do you think of the stories that we can put out? So one of the stories out there is that the world is moving to faster, like production, hyper fast, and it used to be Inditex, now it's ASOS, and so a bunch of other retailers who are coming in and providing product really fast. Pakistan is at a unique position for the European market because we're faster than a lot of other supplying countries. Do you see a role for Pakistan in the fast fashion business? Because it is also at the same time moving to nearshoring. What's the challenge for Pakistan there, and are we positioned properly?
Well, I see a chance in that business. Maybe it's not the first priority at the moment, because to do that you first need a very stable performance in your daily operations. You need very efficient management systems, and as well you need a certain mindset. And I think for a lot of companies there's still enough space for improvement really to get there. These very fast fashion, you need as well a workforce, you need merchandisers, and here I do not see that at the moment we have enough people in the country who are really close enough to do that. Has a little bit to do as well that the local fashion here is quite different from from the European and Western style, which is okay and good, but it's different. And you know, in 2000 I was living for a couple of years in Istanbul, where, for example, you have a very strong workforce of young women who are exactly on the same fashion trends and everything, so you don't have to explain them anything. They know exactly what is the latest trend and everything. So that are things which really take a long time to develop. But we have a lot of chances here, and yes, we can be in the fast business, and the potential is here, but we have to overcome certain things. On the one side, environmental performance is, with a lot of companies, not good. We still are in a country where the laws do not necessarily require wastewater treatment, which is a big pushback on an international level. You cannot sell that anymore. We definitely have to work, what you mentioned as well, on labor relationships, industrial relationships, because that is a main issue with the recent developments in all the European initiatives. Complaint grievance management is something where we really have to focus in on and come to much better relationships. And what I see as well is something split. I see people who are really highly innovative and success stories like we just heard from Interloop. But what concerns me, I often hear as well, we need help in here and there. And my personal opinion is, guys, the British left some time ago. There is nobody anymore coming to help you. It's up to you. You have everything here. You have a lot of good things. You have the entire supply chain. You have a very strong workforce. You have good people. You have to do it and initiate it on your own. Nobody outside is waiting for you and will come. Grab it like Interloop did it, like you did it. You have built up tremendous companies in this country, and you can do it. But don't sit here and wait that somebody is coming and take you by the hand.
Okay, so what we hear from Karl is there's a huge opportunity, but we as a community, we as a country, we as a nation have to stick together and figure this out for ourselves. We're unlikely to get travelers coming in like Bangladesh did, like Turkey did, and in their evolution of the industry, they got a lot of help from outsiders coming and telling them how to do it. I think the situation may not change in the immediate future, and that's why we need to stick together and figure this out. And you know, Salman, that's where like the government comes in very handy, you know, in pulling these groups together and reduce the insecurities and the lack of trust between these groups. Is the government really, because I don't hear of anything that is major coming from the government in terms of initiative to derive a policy to drive us forward. What's going on there, and especially with regards to the SME sector? Navaid started as an SME, you know, I started this company as an SME. What is there that's focusing on a revival of the SME business?
I think what Karl just said is, I realized that the ecosystem for the textile value chain is very weak in Pakistan. And even the institutional arrangements within the industry are not very innovative. So I don't want to name, I mean, your associations. There are a host of associations which could really bring the latest know-how about markets, about products, about fashion to the manufacturers and the entrepreneurs, and that thing is missing. Too much focus is on what the government can do. I think that is a very misplaced focus, because the government is, number one, very inept to do lots of things, and don't expect the government to do everything and then you just sit in your factories and produce the stuff and hand it over to somebody to sell it. You have to actually go out and do the selling, and you have to do the manufacturing, and you have to do the training, you have to do the marketing, you have to create the brand image. The government can only support you. And that support may come in, you may say that, okay, we need a very good textile university or something like that. And yes, we can give you a free land, and maybe we can give you some help with infrastructure, but at the end of the day, You have to bring everybody over there, the teachers, the researchers, the brand builders, and the innovators is part of the thing. Now, yes, the government's regulatory regime might be very bad. And we heard that travel is not available to the business community. They cannot come and freely have a nice, pleasant stay over here. Maybe the hotels are not up to that mark. Maybe we don't market our country to attract these people. I'm sure if a buyer had a choice of buying it from Turkey versus buying it from Pakistan, he would probably take his wife to Turkey and he will probably get some more insurance for Pakistan. So I think those are some of the issues, and the business community has to solve these problems on their own. Government, the best thing they can ask from the government is to deregulate. And we should remove those people who visit your factories and half the time you are filling out forms and we are just increasing your cost of doing business. But I think the industry also at times is looking for handouts, and we need to get beyond that. So the leadership has to come from the industry. And it's a very profitable industry, I think, given our cost structures. It is the one in which we should really be excelling. We should have outstanding design houses. We should have outstanding universities, research centers, innovation. The equipment manufacturers should be here. So I think we need to, and of course it reflects in our exports. We are doing about what, $13 billion in a value chain which is $800 billion. So we are just, just starting. So to answer your question that can the government do, I think the government will do what it has always done. Will probably make you a textile policy, and you will put in all your demands there, and some will be met, some will not be met. But other than that, I think the innovation, the drive, the entrepreneurship, that has to come from the industry.
So speaking of innovation, Navaid, you've been at the forefront of being an innovative company. Like if somebody asks you for advice on, how do you start on this journey and how do you sustain it? What's some advice you would give an organization that is wanting to sort of change from doing the mundane to becoming innovative?
So I think you have got a better understanding of what that means. I think our innovation has been mostly on technology and how to improve efficiencies. I would say we have not done that well on the product side, I will admit. So I think for our processes, we are very inefficient. And I think when we are dealing with HR or improving our processes, we are always looking at that as a cost, not as an investment. So we should be looking long term. So the results, if you are trying to implement a lean program or something like that, don't expect it to change you or improve your costs tomorrow or in a year. It will take some time. So be patient. So that is my first advice. On the product side, I think what we lack is, what we have felt is that not only that the Western customers are not coming to Pakistan, for our people who are working for us in product development, in marketing, the travel is difficult. It's difficult to get them visas. And unless and until they visit Europe and US and see what's happening there, so their understanding of what's the consumer requirement and how is it changing in the West, I think that needs to improve. So we need to provide exposure to our people, especially in the product development, in marketing, on how the world is changing. And I think we need to bring in more technical people. And I think there is a mental block in producing low-end, low-price item in Pakistan, which is easy, but very respectfully beg to disagree with, or will add that yes, that is a big opportunity, but I think Pakistan can, do a mid-level. Pakistan needs to do that. First of all, 13 billion, we are only doing cotton. And you know better than me that now cotton is not a fiber of choice. So it's, if you have to do something in the medium end, high end, you need polyesters, you need nylons, and those are not available. So I think we need to, first of all, break that mindset that we just have to spin cotton yarn and, these two. I think we need to look for new products, how the world is changing. So I think that will help us a lot.
So what I hear, I think in summarizing what we've discussed here as a group, is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of opportunities for Pakistan that it can grab with the global shifts that are taking place, with where we are. We're moving out of that whole war zone area, and the world is looking at Pakistan as an option to buy product. But at the same time, we need to come together as an industry to resolve some of these problems from within, because to expect help from outside is, expecting too much. But at the same time, like Navaid also said, there's no shortcuts. We need to figure this out for ourselves. We need to create a vision for the industry within our associations, within our pool of people who are working in the industry. And I'd love to see, in this audience, maybe people who are 20-year-old, 30-year-old, sitting as the new entrepreneurs, the new, generation who's going to take over the industry in the future. And we haven't seen that for the last 20 years. We need to revive the industry, make it attractive. And that's the role of the associations. They need to stop throwing in the entire bucket at the government and look at what they can do to revive the industry on their own. So with that, I would love to conclude this discussion. Again, I'm honored with the level of people in this panel, and they've not only contributed here, but to the industry at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was indeed a very inspiring panel.